Hi, my name is Daniel from Ingenious Prep, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about business school today, and in particular about the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, which is where I happen to go to business school, and got this awesome blanket actually that I thought I'd show you guys. So it rolls out. Um, so when thinking about business school, I like to think of it in three parts in terms of a value proposition. So number one, you go to business school for the knowledge transfer. That's actually understanding what's said in the classes, the content, kind of understanding the knowledge. Number two, you go for the stamp of approval. I mean, you got into this business school, you handled the curriculum, and you got a degree. So that conveys some information to potential employers and organizations and other people. Number three, you go to business school for the network. So you get access to and develop a large network of people who can help you professionally as you progress through your career. So it's helpful to me to think of business school through that lens, so you can understand what is most important to you and which schools do the best at addressing each issue. When moving on to Chicago Booth in particular, I want to talk a little bit about how to get in and what Chicago looks for. So, of course, across all business schools, there's basically three main components that I look at. Number one, it's your test scores. Number two, it's your college record. And number three, it's your career trajectory and your story. So, starting with number one, your test scores. That one's pretty easy. Everyone knows you should get a pretty good score on the GMAT. I will say at this moment, taking the GMAT versus the GRE, the GMAT makes more sense. You typically want to take the GMAT and you want to do well on the GMAT. The only case where it may make sense to take the GRE is if you're undecided on which graduate school to go to. And that means you might be pursuing a master's in English or an MFA or an MBA or a master's in social work, and you want to take the GRE to keep those doors open. But in general, if you're pretty sure you're going to go to business school, you should take the GMAT. And within the confines of the GMAT, of course, you want to get the best score that you can. Of course, you want to try to get above the average score for the particular school. I'll also add that a lot of times the breakdown of the score between quantitative and verbal matters a lot as well. So a benchmark that a lot of people like to set is the 80-80 benchmark. So they want to get at least in the 80th percentile for verbal and at least in the 80th percentile for math. I know that affected me personally because I took the GMAT the first time without a ton of studying, and I got a 720, which was a fine overall score. Though when my breakdown came out, it was less than ideal. So it was something like a 68 percentile in quantitative and a 99 percentile in verbal. So while that overall score is great, a lot of the schools, especially the more quant heavy schools like Booth and Wharton, are going to want to see that quant score at least near the 80 percentile. So what I did personally is I took the test again, not even so much to raise the overall score, but just to try to even out those two subscores a little bit. And I did that, and I on my second try, that I got a 730 on the GMAT, and my quantitative score went up considerably. So that helped a lot. That's just something to keep an eye on. You don't want to be too lopsided, especially if you're coming from a background that wasn't quant heavy. So if you came from a major that wasn't quant heavy and a profession that wasn't quant heavy, that may be something you want to definitely look at and excel in any type of signaling that you're good at math. Number two is your college, basically your college history. So it's which college you attended, what classes you took, and how you did. That's essentially set in stone. There's really not much you can do to change that. You have to turn it in. Of course, you need to explain anything it's wildly out of the ordinary, but at this point in the application process, there's not much you can do to alter that. Which brings us to our third piece of the business school application, which is your story. And that has to do with your work experience, the narrative you tell, which is extremely important. I look at the first two things we discussed, the GMAT score and your grades, as essentially checkboxes. The schools want to see that you did them. They want to see that you did them well. But having a wildly good GMAT score isn't usually going to push you over the edge compared to someone with just a very good GMAT score, for example. So where you really differentiate yourself with business school is how you tell your story, and making sure that your story makes sense, shows a progression, and shows that business school is the necessary piece in the progression that will help you get to the next level. So I see students struggle with this consistently. It's hard. It's hard to do, and especially for people who don't actually know why they're going to business school, it's very hard to fake this part. It's hard to make up a reason why you just want to get to business school. If the true reason deep down is just because you want to get that degree, admissions committees see through this pretty quickly. So you really want to develop a narrative. At Ingenious, we help students do that. We help you develop what's called an application persona that makes sense to the reader and ties your story together, and shows how business school is really going to help you amplify um, the skills you already have, and bring you to the next level to scale them, if you will, to use a common business school term, uh, to the next level. So I would say of the three pieces, they're all important, but for business school in particular, you want to be very, very certain that the story you're telling makes sense, and the story you're telling is compelling and shows why business school is necessary in your progression. Um, to talk a little bit about Booth in particular, what Booth is looking for, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very quantitative heavy program. So they like to see data-driven decisions. They like to see people who think for themselves, who are open to looking at the data, and from that data, they can arrive at their conclusion. They do not like to see people close-minded or people who have already arrived at their conclusion, no matter what the data may tell them. So I would say anything in that realm that you can focus on for Chicago Booth, that will really make a difference in showing that you're a good fit for Booth, which at the end of the day is quite important to them. Secondly, and along the same lines, Booth is known as a quantitative school. So anything you can do to show the way you excel in quantitative work, financial modeling, math, anything like that will go a long way to convincing Booth that you're a good fit for them. I addressed this earlier, but just thinking a little bit about should you go to business school or should you not? That's a personal decision. One key example I like to tell people when they're considering business school is that you need to know exactly what you want to do when you're entering business school. So a lot of people are in their 20s and don't know what they want to do with their lives, and maybe their parents are asking them, or their significant others asking them, or their significant others' parents are asking them what they're going to do. And going back to school is a very easy answer. I'm going to law school. I'm going to medical school. That's an easy answer. It helps you buy some time. For business school in particular, though, you arrive at campus, and literally within several weeks, you are recruiting for the job you hope to get out of business school. So when you arrive, you are recruiting for a summer internship for your middle summer, and then that is what you hope turns into your job offer for a typical business school path. So it is very unhelpful to show up to business school hoping to just explore, and maybe you'll be a consultant, maybe you'll go into finance, maybe you'll be an entrepreneur. I would say that is less helpful, because business school is set up to launch you on a particular path through the classes, through the recruiting, and through your peers. So my advice on whether or not to go to business school is that you should go to business school so long as you know precisely what you would like to do after business school. Similarly speaking, there's a lot of career tracks that just require business school. If you work at McKinsey, if you work at Bain, and you've reached a certain point in your career, business school just makes sense for that next step, and that is going to be a very clear pathway along your career progression. Finally, what I'd like to say is that we talk to a lot of students who are in college thinking about business school. and it is almost always required that you first get work experience, and that work experience helps to shape your experiences in the classroom. It helps to inform the committee on how effective you are in the real world. Your classmates are richer for having heard your experience from different industries. So this is something that nearly all the top business schools require, and they do not want you to apply directly out of undergrad. Of course, there are some exceptions. There are some deferred enrollment programs that are typically quite hard to get into, but are excellent programs and give you some leeway. So that is a possibility for particularly well qualified students. But in general, you're going to be applying to business school after some work experience. So for those of you who are still in college, my best advice would be to map out as best you can what your next 5 or 10 years might look like. And if the job you get out of college helps to tell that story of how you're progressing, that's going to make a big difference. If you hop around to several different jobs every year or so after college, that is not going to help to tell the story that you want to tell the business schools. Within that framework, there is some room for creativity. I mean, you can be someone blending art and business, and you're helping small artists scale at a you know to reach a larger audience. You're creating apps for them. You're working at a company that's, you know, introducing artists to Sotheby's, whatever it might be. Even if it's a little bit niche, you can sell that story. Although it is typically a little bit more difficult than the typical, McKinsey consulting track or something like that. But you do want the story to make sense. Well, that's it for me. I hope that was helpful. I hope I helped illuminate some of the ways that you can stand out in the business school process, and in particular at Chicago Booth. So thanks.